Unfortunate for the Rays, they got 6 more games before this current, I guess you would say, slump is over. Maybe they can pull themselves out of it, but they're trying to do it against a team with, the best record in baseball. Man, the bullpen, the Rays bullpen, not that they scored any runs. Look, they scored just 1 run, right? They lost 5-1 to the Tigers. But I guess we discovered why Paul Gervais hasn't pitched in a while. Get this stat. The Rays bullpen has now allowed multiple runs in 5 straight games and 8 of their last 10. It's a total of 44 earned runs in their last 15 games.
I got to wonder when the last time that happened to the Rays.
It's got to be a minute.
And I would almost think the 44 in
15.
In 15 games.
Yeah.
That almost has to be a time when they were using openers a lot because the bulk guy was going so many innings. You were using so many relief innings that
makes sense. Yeah.
Maybe you get that. But like this year, I'm sure it hasn't happened.
No.
In a 15-game stretch.
It's the worst stretch I can remember, which is saying something, right?
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, and I'm just throwing this out there. It means nothing, and it probably is just an excuse and whatnot, okay? So the Rays went from the team that, more or less invented the opener because they didn't feel like they had enough guys in the rotation that could get deep into games. And in fact, what they're doing this year is antithetical to what they've always done. You've got, they're one of the top teams in baseball in terms of innings pitched by their starters.
Yep.
Having said that, does that mean that these guys on the other end maybe haven't been in enough situations, gotten enough work? It's not like these guys are pitching complete games, so you've still been using your bullpen. But for a while there, they were scoring so many runs, there really wasn't a lot of high leverage situations. I'm just wondering, look, baseball's a weird game, right? Like it's just, hitters can go in slumps collectively as a team. I've seen fielding slumps. Certainly, I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that your bullpen can kind of go through it too as a collective group, right? Mm-hmm. Like negative energy is just that. So I'm just wondering, like, they haven't had the type of work and maybe overwork that they've had in the past. Could there be this kind of weird mix now that when they really need them, they've not been in many leverage situations as they were in the past? And with all the runs they scored.
I think that's definitely possible.
Yeah.
I think, I look, the offense has scored so much, the bullpen hasn't had to be great, but they've been great most of the year.
Right, but a lot of games, though, they would come in and we've said, Set has given up a few runs, but they had such a big lead it didn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. Like, hasn't been as sharp. Like, there's certain guys.
I think there's almost another side to this, too. And hear me out on this.
Mm-hmm.
Their pitching staff, the starters particularly, but even the bullpen, has been extremely healthy.
Yeah.
In years
no one's
past,
missed a turn.
In years past, bullpen guys, whatever, like you'd pitch and then you'd go on the IL for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, for whatever reasons. Sometimes fatigue, sometimes a shoulder, or oblique, whatever. Like,
right.
These guys haven't gotten rest. They've been pitching all year. Everybody.
Yeah.
And is it starting to wear on them a little bit, including some of the heat, including some of the everything is different. And now you're on the road all the time. Like, is there just maybe some of it's mental fatigue more than physical?
It could be. I mean, look, it could be. I think, they've mentioned it, although not ad nauseum, because they were winning a lot of games at Steinbrenner after they weren't. But they have mentioned how hot it's been, how much, they've expended physically, in that humidity and whatnot. Certainly being on the road as much as they have. Look, they were on the road, for quite a few games before they came home for just 3 against the A's and then right back again. And they still have 6 games left. So this is a tired ball club, I think. And then emotionally, they've ridden the roller coaster there too a little bit,
Absolutely. And some of this is too, they were so hot for a while.
Oh,
that you're going to come back to norm.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Over the course of a baseball season, and one of the reasons analytics works so well in baseball is because you have 162 games.
Yeah.
Over the course of a season, you generally, by the end of the season, get to the mean. Like you may have been really hot for a while and really cold for spells, but you kind of end up where you typically are.
Where you belong.
Generally. I mean, some players end up getting better, some get worse. Yeah. Injuries and things can affect things, but you generally kind of get there. They were so hot for a while. Part of this is just they were
the
due
law
for
of
a
averages.
spell.
It was going to come back down to earth,
Right. Even in the years where they have the best bullpens, they have stretches where you just don't pitch well. It happens to every team, and you can't necessarily explain it. You don't necessarily know why. Why did the Rays all of a sudden get hot a month and a half ago?
Yeah.
It just kind of happens. And,
Mm-hmm.
momentum and confidence. And sometimes it just takes one guy to have a good outing and it spurs more. And the same thing with a bad outing.
It's really all that game is. It's what professional sports is so much, is that, you have to be confident, and especially baseball. I mean, baseball, man, I don't know, next to golf, it's such a failure sport. The greatest player in the world fails 7 out of 10 times. How do you handle that, right? How do you handle a blown save? How do you handle coming back the next night when you've been walked off 2 nights in a row, right? Like that's the thing. And it is collective. Like it is, I can remember playing high school ball, and there was some kid at Boca Ciega that was throwing a no-hitter, and we had a good hitting team. We won the district that year. And this kid threw 5 innings. I think we got washed out after 5, but it was an official game, and he no-hit us. And our coach was so mad, he made us run in the lightning. And when the lightning came, he made us sit in push-up position in the locker room. We had a very tough coach from Alabama, who I love, George Johnson. But collectively, like each guy that would go up there, we started to press. We started to press because we knew we were getting no hit, and this guy wasn't that good, and we knew we were so much better. And then you could see it. You could see collectively, that kind of happens in baseball, and I can't explain it. Like one guy goes out there, and it's the same is true when guys start hitting. It takes pressure off of guys when you see other guy in front of you doing something, and he hands a baton, and then that guy does something, and so you don't face that pressure. You kind of like feed off that good energy. Maybe they're just going through a tough stretch, like you said. We'll at the end of the season, the Rays will be what the Rays will be. They'll add them up, and if they make the playoffs or they do better than a wild card, the record will say it. But man, right now, they're really scuffling a little bit in the bullpen. But having said all that, you got to score more than one run, and the Tigers pitcher was sensational against them. He's a strike thrower and got ahead of a lot of hitters, and there was some weak contact, and the few balls they hit hard. That's a monstrous park. But then the Tigers put a couple big bombs together and at bats, and next thing you know, they do what the Tigers do. I heard a stat in this game that the Tigers are on pace to have the most wins of any team in Detroit history in baseball, which is crazy to me. If you remember, the '84 Tigers won about 105 games or so, 104 games or something like that in the regular season. I want to say maybe more. Have to look it up, but
yeah, I was going to say '84 was. I'm trying to go back and see here.
It was an insane amount of games.
Best seasons in Tigers history. '84 was 104 wins.
104 wins. Now, you got to give me credit for that one, man. I nailed it.
Yep.
But yeah, Howard Johnson was on that team, my teammate from St. Pete College. So that's why I remembered it. But how about that? He played for the '84 Tigers, won a World Series ring, and then played for the '86 Mets and won a World Series ring from Clearwater High. So, yeah, it's just, for the Tigers to be the Tigers as well as they've been playing, I mean, you got Baez batting ninth and playing like his 4th position of his career, and he's an all-star, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good Tigers team, but they're scuffling on this road trip. Look, they could have been walked off 3 times in Minnesota. They managed to win the final game, and now they're one in what, 3, right, on this road trip.
Yep, and they got a chance tonight against Detroit for Game 2. They're not going to see Skubal this series, so that helps a lot.
Yeah, it should help, sure.
And then they'll have a day game Wednesday before they head to Boston for the Final Four before the All-Star break.
Yeah. So still some time left, and they don't want to go limping into the All-Star break. You'd like to at least hold serve a few times and get within 3 or 4 games of first place anyway. Yep. Toronto continues to win.
And no Brendan Lau, no Hassan Kim in the lineup on Monday.
Yeah, they were thin. They were really thin. If they had lost some position players, it would have been tough. So those guys need to get back healthy. Neither one seems that serious. They wouldn't still be with the club on the roster and all that sort of stuff.
Although Kim's already missed 3 games.
He has, yeah.
At what point do you put him on the IL to get some help up
Well, I mean, it could be sooner than later, but I don't think they're keeping him around because they believe he's getting worse. So I imagine, having been what he's been through, he wants no part of the IL at this point. So
Sure, but at some point you got 6 games left before the break.
Right.
If he's not
you're
back,
gonna run out of
if he's not back
infielders
today or tomorrow, like put him
then
on the
you gotta,
IL.
Then you got to wait until after the All-Star break. Yeah.
Well, but put him on the IL. Let him rest for a whole nother week till after the break.
Right.
And be ready. Like, I know he doesn't want that per se, but at some point the team's got to say,
you're going to need a player.
Hey, why are we bringing you back for 2 games this weekend?
Yeah.
And we're going to have a 4-day break. Just take it all off till after the break.
Right. And they may do that. They may do that. We'll see. They don't have a lot of spare position players, I can tell you that. I think they may have had 1 or 2.
Well, yeah, because you basically have 4 position player backups, so 2 of them were out.
And they're middle infielders, right?
Yeah.
You got Brandon Lau and Kim, and
and then Theis is one of your backups, or you're the catcher.
Yeah,
so it really left you one position player backup, basically.
That's it. That's all they had. Yeah. Otherwise, you're putting in a pitcher to play the outfield or some such nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how long they can carry him without putting him on IL, but that's.
Well, the hard part, if you have both Lau and Kim missing, at some point one of them's got to go.
Right.
The IL, because you need another person up here.
Yep. No, you're right. And if they're going to do that, I would think they'd do it here pretty quickly and just, give them the rest of the first half off, and then you get the All-Star break week, and then come back after that, and you should be good to go, if you're going to be good to go ever.
Yep.
Right. So, yeah, tough stretch for them, but they had been so hot, like you said, the law of averages catches up. No one's going to win them all, and you're going to come back down to earth at some point, and that's sort of where they're at. So they got to grind through it and hope they can get some here before this road trip is over. Hey, we got some Bucs things to talk about, particularly the trend in football and whether or not the Bucs will be following it. But first, get on down to Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. We've been talking about these folks. Believe me, if you're looking for the best timepiece you have ever owned, a great maker of watches, Swiss watches, it's Breitling Company. They've been in business for over 140 years. They've been in International Plaza for 5+ years going on now. You go to the center of the mall, go upstairs, second floor. It's a tremendous store to begin with. Customer service is second to none. And spend some time in there, man. They'll pour you a drink. They'll tell you about all their products. For the men, the Navitimers, the Chronomats that they're so known for. They also have watches for your wife, for your girlfriend. These are sports watches. They're beautiful. They're durable. And she can choose from an array of different colored wristbands. She's going to love it. And while supplies last, and that's important, Breitling Boutique is celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary with 32 different team watches. These watches are Chronomat watches. They have the team colors on the face, the logo. They're spectacular. Go to tampabay.com. You're likely to see on our website the Buccaneers team watch. But again, while supplies last, it's Breitling Boutique, folks. They're an International Plaza Mall. Get on down there and make sure you let them know that you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Pretty interesting story by my former colleague, still my colleague, but former Tampa Bay Times colleague, Greg Allman, who now writes for Fox.com. And he wrote about the rise of NFL teams going for it on fourth down. And teams went for it, get this, 60% more just in 2024 than they did a decade earlier. And they had the highest success rate doing that in the last 34 years. So it used to be, a 3-down game. The NFL is becoming a 4-down game, and Greg has the numbers to prove it. In 94, which was just shortly after I started covering the Bucs, teams went for it 463 times and converted just 48% of the time. In 2004, not much difference. 456 times, also converted 48% of the time. 2014, almost the same numbers. 451 gambles there, 46% of the time. So right around between 46, 48% is just where it has been traditionally, right? But in 2024, NFL teams went for it on fourth down 766 times, and get this, they converted 57% of the time. Now, I'm here to tell you, the Bucs, I think, were number one last year in third down conversion at around 52 point something percent. If you're converting 57% on fourth down, man, that's saying it. And so they went for it more than 60% more last year than they did the decade before. And as I said, they converted at the highest rate in 34 years. So what it means is that when you have aggressive coaches like Dan Quinn and Dan Campbell, they're going to empower their teams to know going in that, you know what, this is a 4-down game on offense, right? Like Jaden Daniels is an automatic first down. That guy went 15 to 17 on fourth down. That's an 88% clip, right? He did it converting 9 of them running the football. He was 8 of 8 completing passes. And so, the guy was just lights out. Caleb Williams was good on fourth down. So a lot of these young quarterbacks that have some mobility, that certainly helps and factors into it as well. But you have a quarterback in Baker Mayfield who's very efficient throwing the ball in terms of completion percentage. I think he set a career mark last year, over 71%, I want to say 71, 72%. And he's mobile, and he's a guy that can make some yards with his legs. I think one of these eureka moments that Todd Bowles talks about has to be becoming more aggressive on fourth down at any point in the field. Look, they're trying to protect their defense, and you just hired John Beastline to help you manage the clock better and make decisions like this. Beastline coming from the Jags. And Todd Bowles recognizes that some of the trouble he has is clock management. Well, it's also going for it, and this wasn't fourth down, but if you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs and you can go for 2 and walk off the field as a winner versus, giving them the ball back in overtime and never getting it back and losing, then you also have to have an overall mentality of being more aggressive. If Todd Bowles doesn't join the rest of the NFL this year in his aggression on fourth down, then he deserves whatever bad outcome there is at that point. I think this team is built to convert fourth down, Steve, and I really think that could be a big difference in their season.
Well, it's something fans we've clamored for a while. Like,
sure,
Todd Bowles calls a game trusting his defense,
like a defensive coordinator. Yeah,
and he doesn't want. He's almost the opposite of Bruce Arians, who's one of his mentors and the reason he's in this job. And and granted, Todd Bowles has helped Bruce Arians win a lot in his career, which is why he's here.
Right.
But Bruce Arians was the no risk it, no biscuit. That is not the way Todd Bowles game manages a game. Or
no,
he's not calling the plays. So, but the time.
No, but he's deciding whether to go for it on fourth down or to punt.
Yeah. Well, but we remember back when Brady had the ball in the end of a half and they didn't.
Oh, it was insane at Tennessee.
Well, we don't want an interception. Tom Brady was throwing the least amount of interceptions in the NFL.
At that point, he had I think 400 attempts or thereabouts with like 2 interceptions. Like it was stupid. Like how many complete passing attempts he had without throwing it away. Yeah. So he's been all over the map. And then we remember the Detroit playoff game when there was still time on the clock, and he walked off, walked to the middle of the field and shook hands with the clock's running down. They could have got the ball back. Like, it's just stuff has happened. He recognizes it. That's the good thing. But I just say this: get on the trend. When the league is going one way, you probably need to follow them. Because otherwise you're at a huge disadvantage. If you're having to stop a team on 4 downs and they only have to stop you on 3. And the thing is, if you convert those fourth down plays, right, it's not just 3 more plays. It may be 6 more plays. It may be 9 more plays. You're tiring their defense, which may help you later in games. There's a lot. Now, the negative is, obviously, that if you're scared, if you're scared of your defense and you feel like I can't possibly put them in this situation on the plus side of the field, that's probably what lends itself to more conservative decisions that we've seen from Bulls, and their defense was not good last year. But your strength of your team is the offense, and play your strength and try to hide your weakness. That's what football is, right? That's what you do with any lineup. If your left tackle is down, and you're playing the backup and he's not any good, then you're going to put a tight end over there and try to help him so that you don't expose your weakness. Same thing, with the Buccaneers. They're a much better offensive unit than they are in defense, at least to this point. And, you should try to keep the ball in Baker Mayfield's hands as much as you can. So I really hope that, when Bowles talks about eureka moments, I'm sure it has a lot to do with defense and maybe coverage and playing guys tighter. And we saw what they did in the draft, getting 2 defensive backs in the first 3 rounds. But I also think that there's a reason why John Beastline is here. And I got to believe that Todd Bowles, when you look at the NFC and you see the Dan Campbells and the Quinns and those guys, that's who you're going to have to beat to get to the NFC Championship, or maybe in the NFC Championship, right? Philadelphia, do they go for it on 4th down very much? Yeah. The tush push, ever heard of it? Like, those are the teams that are getting there. So get on the train, follow the trends and see where it leads you. Because I actually think that this team has a lot of the proper weapons and offensive line and different things that would make them a good 4th down team.
I agree, but I also and Dan Campbell last year got a little aggressive at times.
Oh, he can overdo it. It probably cost him a championship game 2 years ago, to be honest with you.
I think there's a lot of times you got to be aggressive, but then in those one-game situations, sometimes you got to go with the field. It's no different than Kevin Cash taking Blake Snell out of the game.
True.
The analytics all season long say that's the right thing to do, and in a regular season game,
and it was for over 162 games,
and that's fine. In a 1-game or a 7-game series, where analytics aren't going to hold out throughout the series,
that's right.
Somebody's going to get hot, somebody's going to be super cold. Things aren't going to happen. Like, you had to see Blake Snell was throwing the game of his life.
You had to manage from the gut instead of taking him out. Right. Yeah.
I mean, your analytics are still a big part of that. I'm not saying it's all gut at that point, but yes, we normally don't like him to see the third, but you knew right away they were going to lose because the body language of the Dodgers changed as soon as they took him out.
Well, it's always going to. Look, I mean, anytime you're playing somebody that is, as we would say, shoving the bats up, the backside, you don't care who comes in. Like, they could bring in a guy throwing 100. As long as the guy that's got you out and is sitting down your entire lineup through 3 times, just get him out of the game. We'd rather just the eye level changes, right? Just the look of a different pitcher out there that's not Blake Snell. You're giving the other team an emotional lift by taking the guy out of the game that has absolutely baffled them the entire 6-7 innings or whatever it is. So that's why you're right. You have to manage from the gut a little bit more in the postseason, but during the regular season, and it did hurt Dan Campbell in the postseason. It hurt him against the Niners, and I think that's probably why they didn't go to the Super Bowl that year, and San Francisco did. But I think it's also, and this is a big part too, you have to establish that mentality way before you start playing games in the regular season. Like, that has to be a message sent and received, I think, in training camp. I think it becomes, hey, guys, not for nothing, this is the way the NFL is going. We feel like we have a ton of talent in here that can pick up 4th down situations. And just so you know, be ready, because we're going to go anytime, anywhere we think we can keep the ball and convert. And it's going to be it's a different year. And, our strength is our offense. And when just be ready to have that mentality that we're going to keep this ball. And that's what you have to do. I think that's what those other coaches have done, and it's worked. And it worked for the Eagles all the way to the Super Bowl.
All right, Rick, we got a mailbag question here from Paris who asks, regardless of how Chris Godwin might look in training camp, do you think he should start on the PUP list to buy more rehab and practice time? I'm of the opinion we need him 100% in December and January for a playoff run versus rushing him back for week 1.
If you listen to and you go back in the podcast and listen to the interview I had with Jason Light, it came across pretty loud and clear to me that, they know Chris will do everything to be ready week 1. And it was almost an admission that, like, we didn't draft Emeka Buka because Godwin was injured. But now that we have him, we feel like it's a luxury, right? Like we don't have to let Chris be his own worst enemy and try to force himself into the lineup week 1 like he did after the 3 ligament tears, and he played against Dallas, and he did okay, but then suffered a hamstring strain, was out a few weeks. There's no need to rush Chris Godwin. So I don't know that there's a plan per se. I mean, they'll probably never state it that clearly, although I think Jason Light made pretty good reference to it. If you don't have to read too far between the lines, you can go back and listen to that podcast on Sports Day Tampa Bay. But yes, I believe that nothing will be preordained. They'll give Chris every opportunity to go at his own speed, and maybe he'll need more time. Maybe he won't be ready by the opener. But even if he is, I could see them saying, let's make you even more ready, because it's a long season. And look what happened last year when they lost both Mike and Chris. Well, then they wound up losing 4 straight games. How do you know Jalen McMillan isn't going to get hurt? How do you know that Mike Evans isn't going to get hurt? He missed 4 games last year, or parts of it. So I think Chris is going to play a big role in this team when he's back, but there's no rush to get him back because of the receivers you already have, at least to start the season. Hey, that may change week 1. It may change week 1 when you get out there against Atlanta and somebody gets hurt, and you'll be glad that Chris is ready. I just don't. I don't think it'll be said that way or spoken, but I think it's understood. And Jason all but said it when I talked to him not too long ago about the season and about Godwin specifically. So we'll know more when we get to training camp this month, and we have not seen him do anything physically. I don't know that he's going to be cleared to practice, or what he'll be cleared to do in training camp or the preseason. That's all a mystery to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so until we see him out there, then you can't really count on him. But
well, it also won't be said because you can't put a guy in the PUP list if he's able to play.
Correct.
So you can't go out there and be like, we're just going to put him on the PUP list to buy him time. Like,
that's correct.
That's the other part of this is you still have to be hurt to do that. It's not just a list you can just put any player you want on there.
Right.
Now, coming back from that injury, it wouldn't be hard to make the case. And he may not even be cleared for practice at that point, which then it's really easy. But, but yeah, there's no need for this team to rush him back. Particularly with every starter on offense back. So, you're assuming Josh Grizzard does a good job calling plays. You're assuming that this offense can be better. And then you've drafted Ibuka that can kind of fill Godwin's shoes until Godwin's back. There's absolutely no reason you would ever rush Chris Godwin back, other than Chris Godwin's going to try to rush back because that's just the type of guy he is. And even though Ibuka's there and whatever else, like, Godwin wants to play football. I mean, that's what guys do. They want to play football or baseball.
Yeah, they're paid
to
play. They're not paid to sit. Yeah.
That's why guys don't want to come out of games and try to play through injuries and maybe lie to the trainers about how hurt they really are. Guys want part of it's job security, but in Godwin's case, it's not that. It's he loves football and wants to play. And that's what guys do.
Right. And really, there's a couple of things they could do. Like, let's say they start training camp and he's not ready to do what they need him to do. They could put him on the active PUP list and at the start of training camp because of pre-existing football injury, which this would qualify. And he would count against the 90-man roster limit, but he can be activated at any point during camp. So that's one thing they could do. Or they could decide to put him on the reserve PUP. And if a player remains on the active PUP list at the time of the final roster cuts, when they get down to 53, they can then be moved to the reserve PUP list. And that requires them, though, to miss at least the first 4 regular season games. So if they move him to the reserve PUP to carry an extra player, now he's got to miss the first 4 games. And that's a different sort of calculus as to where he's at in his rehab and stuff. It's one thing to say, we'll carry him on the roster and maybe he's inactive or, we'll go another direction. But every roster spot is precious. And, you get down to those final cuts, it's likely to be receivers anyway. So maybe you carry an extra receiver. Maybe you say Christmas is the first 4 weeks. All this remains to be seen. Nobody has really, at least outside of the organization, really seen how Chris is doing, what he feels. We saw him walking around. That was it. Didn't look worse for wear doing that, but that's not playing in the NFL. So all this stuff is to be determined, but I do believe that they're going to err this time on the side of caution, and they'll have to sit on him because he's going to absolutely want to play, and if he's ready, they'll play him. But they have the luxury, at least to start the year when Mike is healthy, and assuming everybody else is with Emeka and Jalen McMillan, and that you start the season and then you just see how you go. And then, there's inevitably there's going to be an injury somewhere along the line. You got Chris Godwin in the wings. So not a bad insurance policy if that's the way they go. It's one of the big questions at training camp, one of the first ones we'll try to monitor and ask. And I don't think any of us will know until we get down to the final cut down date, to be honest with you. All right. Hey, before we go, make sure you go see our friends at Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the Buccaneers team watches, 32 team watches, as a matter of fact. While supplies last, it's Breitling Boutique. They got watches for yourself, your wife, your girlfriend, sports watches. She's going to love them. Please go see them and make sure you let them know that you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.